I love digging into uncommon brands that are making an impact, and today I pulled the trigger on 5 new tools from a brand that I purchased a number of tools from in the past. From saw guides to squares to even some tools you probably haven't seen before, I'd put up any of these tools against some of your more expensive brands like woodpeckers.
What?
So let's see if these 5 new tools can continue the trend and live up to my past experience. So you probably heard the saying that once you go black, you never go back. And once you go burnt, you're not going to need those sleeves on that shirt anymore. But this saying has even more meaning when we take a look at today's brand, Woodraffic, as these quality black tools are making some noise in the tool market. And because of this, I decided to pick up 5 more of these South Korean made tools to see how they stack up to some of the best tools made here in the USA. But before we take a look at these 5 new tools, let's take a look at the 5 tools I've already purchased. Speaking of 5, that reminds me of an anniversary I had with my ex a few years back. When she asked for something that was shiny and went from 0 to 200 in less than 5 seconds, I bought her a scale. Pretty sure that was the beginning of the end. The first 2 items are all about hand tools, whether they're used with hand saws or even chisels. First up, we have the Woodrafic Magnetic Saw Guide. This uniquely designed piece has 3 main features that make precision cutting a breeze. First up is the large clamping surface. With its 2.5-inch width, you can easily get 2 or more clamps attached directly to your workpiece. And once attached, this thing isn't going anywhere, and that's because of my second favorite feature. And that is the soft rubber pad that's on the opposite side of that clamping surface. With that pad in contact with your wood, even without clamps, it's got a great grip. And my third favorite feature is on the square cutting surface of the guide. If we look at the face of the guide, you'll see they've incorporated 3 rare earth magnets into the cutting surface. These allow you to secure your saw to the saw plate, ensuring that you have straight and accurate cuts. And saws aren't the only thing you can use with this guide. Since those chisels are also magnetic, you can use those as well, which can help make squaring up those edges a breeze. And my second hand tool accessory that I got from Woodrafic has many of the same features that the saw guide has. And that is the Woodrafic 1:8 ratio dovetail saw guide. Just like with the straight saw guide, the dovetail guide also has that soft rubber foam to attach securely to your workpiece. And once the guide is placed over your workpiece, it really does have a firm grip. The dovetail guide also incorporates a couple of magnets. Each side of the guide once again has a rare earth magnet to guide your saw as you're cutting your dovetails. And the combination of the rubber grip and the magnet really do ensure accuracy. I just need a spring for a good dovetail saw. The next couple of items I purchased from Woodrafic are 2 squares. And these 2 squares are called the M4 and the M12. Which just corresponds to the length, with the M4 being 4 inches long and the M12 being 12 inches long. And in my opinion, the M4 is probably one of the best squares available today. And that has everything to do with its size. Not only is it small enough to fit in the palm of your hand, but it's also tiny enough to fit into small spaces like the pocket of your shop apron. And the M12 is great as well, having the longer span to do some of your larger layouts. And we'll dive deeper into these 2 squares when we take a look at some of the new tools I just got. And the last tool that I've gotten from Woodrafic is probably one of my favorites, and that is the Woodrafic Multi-Gauge. This little tool is one of the more unique tools that I've come across in the last couple of years. And this 8-inch layout tool is probably something you've never seen before. And because of this, we're going to take a deep dive into this multi-gauge. As one of my new tools is also a multi-gauge, so we'll go over all the features in just a moment. All this talk about multi reminds me of the ocean. You know the best way to clean a dolphin? Yeah, it's multi-purpose cleaner. So let's finally get into it and take a look at my first of 5 new Woodrafic tools. Our first item of the day is the Woodrafic 14-inch miter gauge. Let's take a quick look. One of the first things you'll notice about many Woodrafic tools is their attention and care to their packaging. If we open up the box, you can see that this Woodrafic multi-gauge is securely in the packaging with this foam padding. Not only is this a great way to ship the tool, but it's also a great way to store the tool. But let's take this thing out of the packaging and talk about how it's constructed. This tool has a CNC'd aluminum body and has laser etched markings. And it's these markings that really make this tool stand out. With the white writing on the black background, it really couldn't be easier to read. And as you can see, this new multi-gauge is 14 inches long, while my original one was 8 inches long, but they also offer a 26-inch long multi-gauge. And these lengths range in price from about $80 for the 8-inch long all the way down to about $120 for the 26-inch long. Which may seem a little bit pricey, but I think you'll find it's worth it when we take a look at all the features of this tool. So let's go into some of these features, as this is where this tool really shines through. And in order to understand the features of this tool, let's first take a look at the ruler itself. If we slide the ruler out, you'll notice that it's got a unique T-shaped design. Because the top of this T is 4 inches long, it really gives you a heck of a lot more scribing surface. And it's not only the scribing surface that's 4 inches long, but it's also the lip, which gives you a heck of a lot more reference surface for when you're scribing your lines, versus the Polini pocket rule, which is much smaller. And if you want even more stability, there's even an option for that. By sliding the ruler out of the base, you can see it reveals 2 hex bolts. By simply unscrewing those 2 hex bolts, you can remove that lip entirely. And this allows you to install the wide base for this tool, which gives you even more support at over 2¼ inches wide. And that extra wide base support is sold separately at just under 20 bucks. With the rule removed, let's take a look at some of its markings. With the rule removed, you'll see that it has 2 scales in 1/16 inch increments, one going left to right and the other going right to left. Most of the time, you'll be using the scale that goes from left to right. Let me show you how to set this tool. The first thing that you'll do is you'll unscrew the aluminum knob on the side. Once that's unscrewed, your main reference point will be the 0 point on the base. By referencing this 0 point, you can slide the rule to any measurement that you want. In this case, we're going to go with 3 inches exactly. And once your alignments are made, you can twist the silver knob to lock it into place. And with your alignments locked into place, you can slide the lip right up against your workpiece and easily strike your line on that 4-inch surface. And all of this scribing is a heck of a lot easier than trying to do the balancing act that you do with a combination square or a Polini pocket rule. Now you may have noticed some other markings on the base of this tool that are offset just a bit. These are precision reference points used for scribing or layout work, especially when extremely small measurements are needed. They're intentionally offset from the main ruler scale to allow for micro adjustments without visual confusion. This way you can achieve more easily split increments between 1/64 of an inch or achieve finer layout precision. Which is definitely a heck of a lot more precision than I'll ever need, but it's nice to know it's there. Now that covers the scale that goes from left to right, but what about the one that goes from right to left? If we slide this ruler out and place it in the opposite direction, you can instantly convert this multi-gauge into a depth gauge. By referencing the front end of the lip, you can easily determine the depth of any gap or groove. And if you incorporate the wide base plate when it's being used as a depth gauge, this thing is extremely stable vertically. You're probably also curious what this little angle on the multi-gauge is for. Well, let's go over that. This is a 45-degree angled lip that instantly converts this multi-gauge into a miter square. By resting this angled lip right up against your workpiece, you can easily create a 45-degree line. And you'll find that these 45-degree angles are just as accurate as some of your high-end squares. And not only does this gauge provide perfect 45s, but it also provides perfect 90s. When we compare the lines of the Woodrafic on the left to the woodpeckers on the right, you can see they're perfectly parallel. And it's all of these unique features and more that I think make this a tool that's worth taking a look at. Whether it's being used as a miter square, T-square, marking gauge, depth gauge, or scribe tool, this thing's got a lot of possibilities. And this is exactly why I'm happy to have 2 of these multi-gauge rulers now in my shop. But we're not done yet. Let's move on to our second Woodrafic tool of the day, which is their version of a pocket rule. All this talk about rulers reminds me of my old math teacher. He was arrested, you know. In his house, they found a protractor, a calculator, and a ruler. He was arrested for carrying weapons of math instruction. Now I already have a set of 3 stainless steel Woodpeckers Polini pocket rules. And frankly, they work great. They obviously fit right in your pocket, and I find myself using them more and more. But there's just one problem with them. They're a little salty. And because of this, I'm always on the lookout for cheaper alternatives, and Woodrafic's got some, cheaper for all sizes. Currently, Woodrafic's selling the 7, 9, and the 12 for $24, $27, and $30.97 accordingly. But if you want to get Woodpecker's aluminum version of these, not stainless steel, you're going to have to spend about 50% more. So let's dive into this cheaper Woodrafic version and see what it looks like. First off, you'll notice the design of this Woodrafic is quite similar to the Woodpeckers. But there are a couple of differences. Now unfortunately I don't have the aluminum version of the Woodpeckers, I only have the stainless steel, so that's what we're going to have to compare it to. First off, you'll notice that the Woodrafic is a heck of a lot easier to read with the white writing and the black background than the woodpeckers. And these white markings are laser etched and on both sides of the ruler, and they're in 16th inch increments. The woodpeckers, on the other hand, has 16th inch increments on one side and 32nd on the other. You'll also notice that the woodpeckers is marked on both sides of the rulers versus the Woodrafic, which is only on one side. And I think I forgot to mention this, but that multi-gauge is also only marked on one side. Next up, let's compare the adjustable lip. As you'll see, the Woodrafic only has one locking knob while the woodpeckers has two. But this one knob on the Woodrafic is just as secure as the woodpeckers, as once this thing is locked into place, the lip on this thing won't move at all. And just like with the woodpeckers, you'll also notice some markings on one side of the edge of the rule. And these markings go from 0 to 1 inch and 16th inch increments. And these can be perfect for setting up the height of your table saw blade or a router bit. And unlike the woodpeckers where you have to use the adjustable lip to awkwardly hold this ruler vertically, the Woodrafic ruler is wide enough where it stands vertically on its own, making this a more stable ruler to get your calibrations correct. Now, one of my largest complaints about the woodpeckers is that its adjustable lip is kind of small to reference your workpiece to get that perfect 90. But the Woodrafic has solved some of this, as it's got a lip that's 1 5/8 inches versus the woodpeckers, which is 1 1/4 inches. And this extra length gives you a little bit more real estate to reference your workpiece so that you can make sure that all your measurements are secure. Another great feature of the Woodrafic is it does have that small bird's mouth on the very end to slide your pencil in so that you can get an exact measurement, which is one of the features that I've come to love with the Polini pocket rule. But I also want to make sure that this Woodrafic pocket rule is actually square. So I'll first extend the ruler out to its longest position. With the ruler fully extended to the lines that we struck earlier, you can see that the lines are perfectly parallel and everything is perfectly square. And with almost all the features of the woodpeckers and an easy to read design at 2/3 of the price, this can be a great alternative. But we need to continue on, as we've got 3 more black and white tools we need to take a look at. And our next item is a square that's based on a design that's probably one of my favorites. Speaking of squares, did you see last night's local news? Yeah, they're installing a large dreidel display right in the town square. Until further notice, it's their top story. So I already told you in the beginning of the video that I've already got a 4 and a 12 inch Woodrafic square. And in my opinion, these are great sizes to have, whether you go with the 4 inch, which is great to fit in your pocket, or the 12 inch, which is great for larger measurements. But sometimes you want something in between these two sizes, and that's exactly why I got our next item we're going to take a look at. This is the Woodrafic M8. Let's give it a quick look. So as to be expected, this is indeed an 8 inch square. And if we open up the box, you can once again see Woodrafic's attention to detail with the excellent packaging, which could easily be used to store the tool when not in use. And you probably notice it does come with a mechanical pencil, which is a nice little bonus. So why did I get this Woodrafic M8 square? Well, a lot of it has to do with a woodpecker square, the 642. For years, my primary square in my shop was this Woodpecker 642. There's just one problem with it. It was so expensive, I was afraid to use it. And I really wanted the 12 inch version of this, but I just wasn't willing to pay the price. So I ended up purchasing the M12 and the M4, and these are about 55 to 60% of the cost of those woodpeckers. And I've never looked back, and since Woodrafic has a 4 inch square as well as an 8 inch square, which are two sizes that woodpeckers just doesn't have, I thought I'd give the new M8 a try. So let's see how this M8 stacks up to my 642. If we look at the blades of the two squares, you'll see that they're quite similar, having 32nd inch increments on both sides of each blade, with the Woodrafic being a little bit easier to read with the white writing on the back background, and these are once again CNC machined as well as laser etched on the markings. And both squares have that incredible lip on the front of the square to support the square as you strike your line. And both lips have a scale on the front of them, with the Woodrafic having 1/16 of an inch increments and the woodpeckers having 30 seconds. Now, one feature that the woodpeckers has that the Woodrafic doesn't is a vertical scale. Just like with the pocket rule, this scale can be useful for blade setup over at the table saw or bit setup over at the router table. Now, one thing to note about the Woodrafic versus the woodpeckers is the balance of the tool. Unlike the woodpeckers, which lays flat on your workpiece with no support, the Woodrafic needs a little bit of support on the front, or it will tumble over. So that may be something to consider if you think it's going to be an issue, but I haven't had a problem with it myself. Now, unlike the other Woodrafic tools we've taken a look at today, this square is double-sided. If we flip the square around, you can see there's scale markings on both sides. And probably one of the most important things about this Woodrafic square are its scribe holes running down the entire length of the square. Just like with the woodpeckers, this square has scribe holes at every 1/16 of an inch so that you can get your measurements exactly where you need them. And they really don't waste any space at all, with the Woodrafic having scribe holes going down to the very tip of the square, while the woodpeckers only goes down to about a 1/4 inch towards the end. And if we place both squares on end, you can see that their markings perfectly align and the scribe holes match up to a T. But is it square? Well, let's strike one more line next to our other lines and see if they match up. And as you can see, we have 4 perfectly parallel lines, ensuring that we're all squared up. Now, yes, there are a few features that the Woodpeckers has that the Woodrafic doesn't, but at 55 to 60% of the cost, I'm willing to overlook these features. And this is why I've been super impressed with all of these black and white Woodrafic precision squares. You know, these tools are pretty nice with that black and white writing. Reminds me of my ex. Whenever she get upset, I'd let her color in my black and white tattoos. Sometimes she just needed a shoulder to crayon. Our next Woodrafic tool is about as simple as it gets, but it's perfect for making those precision markings on the edge of your workpiece. You see, sometimes it can be difficult to make markings on the edge of your wood with the ruler because of a couple of reasons. First off, it may be a little difficult to make sure that your ruler is completely parallel with the edge. And sometimes your ruler may be so wide it may be difficult to get your markings close to the edge. Not to mention, the scale on these rulers oftentimes doesn't start from the end of the ruler. And that's exactly why you might need this next Woodrafic tool. This is the Woodrafic Edge Rule. Let's see what it's all about. This is an extremely uncomplicated design. If we look at the edge profile, you'll see it's in the shape of an L. If we look on the sides of the ruler, you'll see that there's 2 scales, one going from left to right and the other going from right to left, with the longer arm of the edge rule being 1 inch long and the shorter side being 1/2 inch. To use this edge rule, you simply cradle it on the corner of any workpiece that you want to mark up. This ensures that your ruler is fully supported and perfectly parallel to the edge of your workpiece. And with its 32nd of an inch markings going right to the edge of your ruler, you can make sure that all your measurements are referencing the very end of your workpiece. And whether you're using the long arm or the short arm of the ruler, you can make sure that all your measurements are directly referencing the edge of your material. And with the measurements running in the opposite direction of whatever scale's on top, you can even take your measurements from the opposite side, making this a flexible little gadget for many of your layout needs. Well, it's hard to believe we're finally down to our last item, and our last item is by far the tiniest item we're taking a look at today. Speaking of little things, my ex had a tiny little tattoo of a seashell on her inner thigh. Whenever you'd put your ear up to it, you could smell the ocean. This tool is so tiny, it's actually in the palm of my hand right now. Now, we've taken a look at a lot of squares today, all the way from 4 inches up to 12 inches, but this one's even smaller than that 4 inch. So what could be smaller than this M4? Let's find out. This is the Woodrafic Mini Square. Let's give it a quick look. So in my opinion, this is a quick calibration tool. With its 1 3/4 inch base and almost 2.5 inch height, this thing is really pretty small. And if we take a quick look on both sides of this square, you'll see there's no scale on either side. And that's because this square really isn't about measurement, it's about calibration. Whether you're checking your squares or your table saw or even your bandsaw, this thing will quickly tell you whether or not you're square. And it really is the size of this thing that makes it so unique. It's small enough to put in your pocket so that you can take it with you wherever you go in your shop, or have it one of your tools as a quick reference for you on tools that you don't always calibrate. Well, that's going to wrap us up today. I had a lot of fun and I hope you did too, as I love taking a look at a lot of tools that don't get a whole lot of playtime on YouTube. Well, I think the key words here for this Woodrafic brand are precision and ease of readability. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, leave a like, leave a comment, and share this video, as it truly does help out this small woodworking channel. Also, if you haven't checked out my website already, go to flynndogwoodwork.com. There you can find all sorts of fun woodworking accessories like all the t-shirts that I wear in my videos. Lastly, if you'd like to become a channel member, check out my channel memberships in the description below. There you get early access to all my videos as well as one member video each week. Until next time, take care as always. All right, let's get it. I bet you never guessed why I sleep with a small ruler in my bed. Yeah, I got a foot fetish. You know, I made a car out of some pencils, a ruler, a eraser, and a notebook. Whenever I turned that key, it would just stay stationary. All right, here's another car one for you. You know, I got a small car in my crotch. Yeah, it's driving me nuts. All right, last try. If you have one small green ball in one hand and another small green ball in the other, what do you have? Kermit's full attention.